Hey there, it's Gone Girl. For all you people out there that think I'm a quitter, or I'm a loser, or I'm not need to toughen up, I think I'll tell you the story. When I was born 2 months early, and I was dumped at a NICU unit in Montreal, where, due to a brain tumor, I had surgery on my brain. You couldn't be adopted till you were 9 months, so I was sent to an orphanage. Then, in Montreal, due to my head injury, or they call it a head injury, even though they sawed my head open, I couldn't learn French. And I lived in an all French. And, well, in Quebec, they only had French schools back then. So I struggled through kindergarten and part of senior kindergarten, not knowing a friggin' word anybody was saying in the classroom. Nothing, zip, zero. Then my parents moved to Toronto. That was when my dad openly started molesting my brother and I. Openly in the sense that he did it without thinking anything would come of it as far as anyone finding out. And yes, he was right. To a degree. Then, at age 13, I started to have an eating disorder. It was anorexia. And I kind of stopped eating. The stress in my house was so high that I stopped eating. Eventually, I was admitted to a hospital, which was because I was pregnant by my dad, as well as anorexic. I stayed in that hospital for 3 years. They said I could never live on the outside world because I wouldn't be able to handle stress. So they diagnosed me with PTSD, which I didn't even know what that was back then. Then my mom and dad moved way across the country, which was phew. I loved that idea. It was great. I was free. I'd already rehomed myself at 15, but walked into the same type of abuse in that family. I did put myself through school, so I got my high school. So after my parents left, I decided I could now safely have a child because said pedophile wasn't anywhere around. And I had my daughter. My daughter was the most awesome thing that ever happened to me in my life. I was so in love with her. It was just, oh my goodness, I can't even explain. And to be honest, I love her just as much today, even though we're not speaking. You know, she was the greatest thing since sliced bread to me. And she was a really good kid, too. She really was. At age 8, okay, back up a bit. When I was 2, I had the Forrest Gump get up. I didn't really walk, but I had to have the Forrest Gump get up because one of my foot was born backwards. My daughter actually had the same thing, but we were able to non-surgically fix hers. But in my day, it was the Forrest Gump get up, which I tell you was no fun. Try sleeping with your feet glued together with these heavy, heavy shoes. Then, at 4, the eye surgery started. Because of the surgery in my head, they wrecked the optic nerve. So, I had to have corrective surgery to mostly my right eye, but a bit to the left. I don't see out of my right eye, and I never really did, other than light shadow movement. But because of the type of home I grew up in, there can't be any imperfections. So 12 surgeries later, I had an eye that wasn't sitting in the corner anymore. When I turned 18, I had emergency appendicitis. At 19, I had an emergency bowel obstruction surgery that my mom was going to let me die. I was at her house for the weekend, and she thought I had a stomach ache because I didn't want to go to a wedding. Who in their right mind wouldn't want to go to a wedding? I mean, that made no sense. But the next day, my dad actually spoke up for once in his life and picked me up, stuck me in a car, took me to the hospital, and I had emergency surgery at 3 in the morning. They basically said if I had waited one more day, I would have been dead because my skin was already peeling off my arms as if it was like a sunburn. So I had that said and done. And then at 21, I had to have my lung taken out. I had a malignant carcinoid tumor in my lung, and I didn't smoke at that point. It was literally on the camera, or I mean on x-rays for about 10 years. But every time they saw the shadow, because of my age, they would say pneumonia, bronchitis. They labeled it pleurisy. Well, they finally stuck a camera down and hit the tumor and went, wow, she's got a tumor. This isn't, we've been treating her for asthma for 10 years and she didn't even have asthma. Another emergency surgery, except this one was 12 hours long. They told my parents and everybody that I wasn't going to make it because I had no oxygen in my blood to begin with. But I made it. I did. So they took that lung out. I went back home. They wouldn't release me to Howard. I don't know why, but they released me to my mom because she was a nurse. So I had to go back to Toronto to heal up a bit. And said pedophile decided to come on to me while I had all the broken ribs and I couldn't move and that. So I ended up calling Howard to come and get me. So he couldn't even leave me alone while I was broken. That's my dad. And by the way, I never went back to live at home. Howard rescued me from the hospital and said, I was anorexic again. And the anorexia didn't go away at that point. So I signed out against medical advice at 18. The doctors at the hospital said I'd be back. But nope, I didn't go back. It took Howard about a year and a half to get me to eat, but he really did succeed. After a year or so of finding food in my toilet tank, anywhere else I could hide it, or I'd make crumbs on the dish, throw the food away, make it look like I ate. But for some reason, he was able to get me to eat without pushing me to eat. I can't even remember how he did it, but he did. It didn't stay. What it did was it morphed into bulimia. So now I'm anorexic and bulimia until I got pregnant. I got pregnant at 27. An instantaneous no eating disorder because I was not going to hurt that baby. Because I was in love with the baby inside me. Now that worked until about the last 2 months and a half. And then the bulimia came back. But luckily, Jessie came early. And she was God's gift to creation, like most mothers feel their kids are. She was an amazing baby. Absolutely amazing. I had gone to school while I was pregnant because I didn't even have morning sickness or anything like that. Well, after the baby was born, my partner at the time, which is who I call the addict now, was drinking. I mean, I didn't know he was doing drugs. He probably was, but I'm not going to say he was because I don't know. But he was drinking, breaking the law. I mean, I live in a smaller town and every cop knew us. It got to the point where they would call me when they had him in jail or the drunk tank so I wouldn't worry. That kind of that kind of relationship. Finally, when Jessie was 2, I left him I didn't have a choice. CAS actually said, it's your daughter or him, and that was an easy choice. My daughter came first in everything. So we left and never looked back. Although I did let him see her any single time he wanted to, because I didn't want her to have to choose between parents. Like that just isn't something I believe in. Then I skipped. Then when I turned 30, okay, I had Jesse at 28, almost 29. Actually, I did turn 29 when I gave birth. I had to have an emergency partial hysterectomy and also a bowel repair because my lovely daughter came out like a scuba diver and knocked my bladder into my underwear and collapsed my bowel wall. Yes, came out just like with her elbow out and wanting to swim. She does know how to swim very well now too. So I had to have emergency surgery, but my mom came down to help. But guess what? My mom went to oh my goodness, can't remember the place. But she left to go visit her friend for the day and left me home with a 2.5-year-old. Kingston. She went to Kingston. 2.5 hours away, and she left me home with a 2.5-year-old, and at the time our toilet was broken. Like, go figure. That was a lot of help. Because they only keep you in the hospital day and a half, no matter what's wrong with you. They seem to not let you get the bed warm. And when Jessica and I moved into that apartment without Howard, we had nothing. And I mean nothing. Literally nothing. The church gave me a case of rice milk because Jessie was allergic to everything under the sun. She was anaphylactic to milk, nuts, fish, and soya, so you had to be a rocket scientist to feed her. But the church gave me 2 cases of her milk, one carob chocolate and one vanilla. And another lady gave me the pad, just the pad from a playpen for Jessie to sleep on, and I rolled up some clothes to make a pillow for her. Like literally that's all we had. And then within a week we had pots and pans, and then someone donated a couch. Like you know how it is. You get things here and there, but we literally didn't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out. But we managed and we had fun. And I was very fortunate. I had a lot of people that helped me. That's why I like helping people now. It's kind of like paying it back. Then I didn't, but the police put Howard in jail because of us and sent us to another women's shelter. Uh, that happened twice after that, but it wasn't me doing it per se. It was they were doing it. Um, but I mean, I'm going to say this definitively. He's never, ever, ever, ever hit me. Never. So that was never of any concern. But then we went on with life and things were okay. I got diagnosed with MS and I ended up in a wheelchair for about 2 years. It's called rapid remittent MS, so it did go into remission. And I ended up being fine. And as I say, I volunteer at the community garden. It opened, I don't know, probably about 15 years ago. And I've been there ever since. I was on the founding board, founding people. There's 90 beds, and as a board member or a helping member, we basically help weed and take care of gardens of the seniors who really want a vegetable garden but can't really do the weeding. So we kind of do that for them. And it's a great community. It's an awesome community. Oh my goodness. I've made such wonderful friends in that garden. And plus, I used to be addicted to it, so I was there like 9 hours a day, getting cooked in the sun, and I loved every second of it. Then, what else am I missing? Then, the accident. The accident stole everything from me. Nope, sorry, missed something. Two, 2007, my sister, Jenny, we lost her to ovarian cancer. She had 6 months to live when she was diagnosed, but we kept her 5 years by Googling the computer to death and finding how to keep her system alkaline because cancer doesn't grow very well. It only grows very well in an acidic system. So we tried everything we could, but in the end, we lost her, and that was devastating. I asked God to take me instead of her because I just couldn't. I couldn't let go of her. She was my best friend. I mean, she was my best friend. There was nobody on this planet that could hold a candle to Jenny. She was so meek and mild and the most loving person I have ever met in my entire life. And then in 2012, on Mother's Day, my brother called me, wanted money. Now my brother was an addict. I couldn't give him money, and to be honest, my daughter and her family were living with me because they lost the house that they were living in because the other grandparents sold it out from under them. So I really didn't have any spare money because I was looking after everybody else. So, of course, I had to say no. And to be dead honest, even if I had the money, I wouldn't have given it to him because I knew he was going to use it on drugs. So, then that was May 8th. Then we find him June 13th. He had been dead from Mother's Day on. He killed himself Mother's Day. There was a note. It was circled on his calendar. He literally probably got off the phone from me and did it. So, because my mom isn't like she was a trauma nurse, nothing phases her. There was police tape up on his door. They hadn't cleared the scene yet, but my mom and her goddaughter, who was a police officer, just marched right through there, holding me by my arm and dragging me in. And yes, my dead, deceased, and decomposed body of my brother was still there. Well, you can imagine the shock I went into. Not only the smell, but to see your loved one in that state. It just blew my brain cells. I'm serious. It literally blew every brain cell in my brain. And I can honestly say I've never been the same ever since. Never. But, and then my mom, we had like this mini memorial service. She wouldn't wait until my brother's body was even cremated. She did kind of this fake memorial service without a body type of thing, and then she flew back out west. And then she calls me and goes, "By the way, the ashes are ready." And this like a week or so later. And she goes, "You have to bury them." So yes, my wonderful daughter, my grandson, her boyfriend, and my best friend Gord and his daughter, and another household friend from growing up, friend of the family, were kind enough to help me bury him at the cemetery. But I was the only person from my family because my mom didn't tell anybody he died. And if anyone found out, she said he died of a enlarged heart. It's not true. He took his life. He was addicted to heroin at that point. So she did. So that was 2012. Oh, I missed when I turned 18. When I turned 18, I was engaged to be married. Something in my gut said this was the very wrong thing. Like, I literally was physically ill. And I go, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. Well, I didn't do it. I didn't show up. Right across the front pages of the newspaper in Toronto that year, read the title Runaway Bride. And the only reason I was in the front page of the newspaper is because Terry Houston, the guy I was engaged to, went and killed my best friend Gail Dupuis and jumped off her balcony, all because I didn't show up to a wedding. That is why I've always maintained I'm allergic to marriage, because I really am allergic to marriage after that. So that was when I left out. So I had the partial hysterectomy at 30. We went to shelters a couple of times. Once not because of Howard. Once was because I was violently raped. And the guy went to jail for 8 years. He had raped 6 people on the same street. So that wasn't such a cool situation to live in. And then, of course, Howard's drinking turned into drugs. So we left. Well, see, I said I had no choice. We were renting a house. It was either him or Jessica. And, of course, my daughter, there was no choice to be made. My daughter was number one. Then I had the MS, or have the MS, and then the car hit me, and that just ruined everything. What little bit of happiness, what little bit of joy, what little bit of anything was gone. And then this year, I got into an argument with my daughter. I said some horrible things. She said some horrible things, and we're no longer speaking. Now, what I can tell you is the loss of my daughter is worse than the accident or anything else that have ever happened to me. That is the worst. That is the most heartbreaking. But you can't choose for someone else. They have to make their own choice. If she doesn't want me in her life, then I have to give her the freedom to make that decision. Although I still love her to pieces, it still breaks my heart in a million pieces. But that's okay. It's bad enough we're fighting over the attic. It's sickening. But, she's got blinders on, and it's her dad. And trust me, I knew she was a daddy's girl, and I wanted her to be a daddy's girl. I literally did. I wanted her to be close to her dad. I'd be lying if I said anything different. So, now, I'm not being taken care of at all. I've been in my apartment since September. There isn't sheets on my bed yet. But everybody all wants to blame me. Well, if you emotionally went through what I went through, I think you would view things a little different, because I live in my bed. I live in my room. That's not untrue. That is the most true thing. It's all over my court papers. It's not anything new since the accident. So I hope this is enough information for you guys that want to judge me and wonder why I want to go, why I want to leave life. If walk a couple years in my shoes. Just do that for me. And then you tell me how irresponsible I am, how uncaring I am, how impulsive I am, and how I want attention. What the heck was attention going to do to me? The only attention I actually wanted was like home care and stuff like that I need. That's it. And it's supposedly coming. I just can't wait anymore. So everyone out there, I love you. Please have an awesome weekend. Please let the sun shine no matter where you are. Please be good to each other. Please be kind to each other. Hug your kids. Before you know it, you may not have them around. So be good, everybody. This is Gone Girl. She's gone.